Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot we have the Tibetan Plateau. It is well known that when a person is at altitudes that are higher than 2,400 meters or 8,000 feet, there are negative effects on the body, such as altitude sickness or high altitude pulmonary edema. It's not something that just anyone can do without experiencing side effects, and that is exactly why those who live in the Tibetan Plateau are so incredible. Often referred to as the roof of the world, the Tibetan Plateau sits at an average of 4,500 meters or 14,800 feet. It's covered in glaciers and sees more hail than it does rain or snow because of these heights. Despite all of the challenges that would come with living in an environment like this, nomadic herdsmen are dispersed throughout this region, even in the most inhospitable regions such as the Changtang region, where the altitude is even higher than the average and the temperatures are the lowest out of the entire plateau, leaving little to no vegetation besides grass for livestock. I think one of the reasons why this place, despite its seemingly inhospitable environment, is still inhabited is because of the fact that the earliest human occupation of the plateau is thought to have happened around 30,000 to 40,000 years ago. That's some very deep roots, and it's a clear testament to those that still live there. In our number 9 spot today we have Centralia. Located in Pennsylvania, this town is referred to as one of the gateways to hell. That is due to the fire that spread in an underground coal mine underneath the town in 1962. Despite the years it's been, the fire still blazes underground, which causes the smoke and poisonous gases to rise up from the ground, not only causing an eerie appearance, but also a very serious health hazard. The temperatures can be so hot in the area that one guy's backyard was measured at 626 degrees Fahrenheit. Sometimes the fire will also burn through supports underground, which in the end turns into a sinkhole. This has caused pets, wildlife, and residents to unsuspectingly get swallowed up into the hole. In 1984, the US government ordered a total evacuation of the town, but there was a handful of residents who refused to leave, and they even went to court over their right to stay in the town for as long as they live. In our number 8 spot today we have Kabwe. Located in Zambia, this place has been described as the world's most toxic town. The toxins in the town are due to the previous century of mining and smelting, which led to generations being exposed to unbelievable amounts of toxins and a mass lead poisoning. The plants closed in 1994, but at that point, the damage had already been done. The population of 220,000 people that still live here are exposed to lead in the dust and soil that is 10 times the US safety limit, but they also stay out of necessity. At this point in time, the World Bank is now conducting a $65 million remediation project, and while that is great news, unfortunately nothing can be done for all of the people who had to deal with this for the last century and a half.
At number 7 we have the Whites Club. Founded in 1613 and located at 37 St. James Street in Piccadilly, London, England, is one of the oldest running boys clubs in Britain, which are quite common within British culture. Only members are allowed in this highly secretive club, and that is political leaders, senior bankers, and heirs to the throne. Oh yeah, and one more thing. No girls allowed! There has only been one woman to ever step foot in the club, and it was of course Her Royal Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. A few members have even left in protest of the incredibly outdated rule, but I think the tradition and over-masculinity of the club is so deeply rooted that it's never gonna change. Members over the years have now shrunk to around 500, and supposedly the bar inside is said to have never closed once over the last 200 years. As much as I would like to put on my most dapper suit and get my way in the club and enjoy a nice cigar and scotch on the rocks, this club I'm afraid is a little too pinkies up for me. And plus also, I enjoy the company of women, especially when I'm surrounded by old British aristocrats. Sorry gentlemen, if you'd like to reach me you can find me down the street at a pub with my pinky and ego lowered. Good day. At number 6 we have Diego Garcia. Located between East Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia, this island is home to one of the most top secret military bases in the world. Maybe they're evil. Maybe it's like that island from The Incredibles and they have one of those super cool separating waterfalls that enter into a supervillain's secret lair? Maybe. Diego Garcia is also said to be home to one of the CIA's floating black sites, which basically means top secret. So needless to say, access to this island is restricted unless you're one of the highest authorities. Once again, we would have to use our super spy skills, but I have a feeling this one is super dangerous and actually not as fun as the secret island in The Incredibles. So maybe let's pass on Diego Garcia and just keep watching spy movies at home. For now. Coming in at our halfway point at number 5, we have North Brother Island. Every single year, millions and millions of tourists flock to the Big Apple. Most tourists try to pack in as much sightseeing as possible and explore every attraction possible. But unfortunately, North Brother Island is off limits. Located in the middle of the East River and not too far away from Rikers Island is North Brother Island, an island that requires prior authorization to visit, or else you're floating on over to Rikers. First claimed in 1614, North Brother Island has a history of disease and death. From the 1880s to the 1940s, the island quarantined people with highly contagious illnesses. Every person who died on the island stayed on the island and was also stored in the morgue located there. From 1951 to almost 1963, the island was used as a rehabilitation center for drug addicts. But in 1963, it was then abandoned and became the property of the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation. It is now home to a bird sanctuary and is closed off due to the deterioration of most of the buildings. It is also said that this island is extremely haunted. Ooh, little ghost hunting anyone? At number 4, we have the Bangar Fort. Located between Jaipur and Alwar in Rajasthan is the ruins of a once great kingdom. The Bangar Fort was built by the rule of Amber Kakwaha for his son in 1573. Sadly, the population of this once great kingdom slowly decreased until a famine in 1783 forced all the villagers out of their homes and had to flee the area. There is a local legend that says the reason for the famine and the evacuation of its inhabitants is because of an ancient curse. People in India still to this day believe so heavily in this curse that the Bangar Fort is legally considered haunted. Legally. A government permit is required to enter the mysterious fort before dawn or after sundown. The only living things currently inhabiting the fort are tigers and other local wildlife. But what else lurks in the depths of this ancient fort is still unknown. Time to go get that permit.
In our number 3 spot today, we have the Siwa Oasis. Siwa is an urban oasis between the Qatar Depression and the Great Sand Sea in the Western Desert. This oasis is one of Egypt's most isolated settlements, but it is the home to around 33,000 people. The residents have developed a unique and isolated desert culture and language called Siwi, but they are also fluent in the Egyptian dialect of Arabic. The oasis isn't necessarily a super popular tourist destination, as the closest city is Cairo, and the oasis is around a 5-hour bus ride away and is, of course, in the middle of the desert, but those who do take the trip certainly aren't disappointed. If visiting, you can enjoy some locally grown dates and olives, which I can only imagine are incredible. You can swim in Cleopatra's Bath, which is a mineral spring, and you can even stay at the Desert Eco Lodge, which is built from mud and salt. Tourism is actually a really vital source of income for the oasis, so visitors are welcomed. Because of how isolated Siwa is, the culture and traditions of the people who live here really have been preserved, which would make it such an interesting and wonderful place to visit. If I ever get the incredible opportunity of going to Egypt, I think Siwa would be on the top of the list of places to visit. In our number 2 spot today, we have Zabul. This city is located in Iran, and it is an absolute hotspot for dust storms. The summer season is where the worst of it is seen, with what is known as the quote 120-day winds. This is when dust and other matter absolutely bombards the city, which is due to the disappearance of the wetlands as well as the extremely high temperatures seen in the region. These dust storms aren't just inconvenient, they're actually very dangerous for those who live in the area. So much so that every year officials hand out thousands of air pollution masks to help prevent the damage that these storms can cause to the lungs. In 2016, the city was named the most polluted city in the world by the World Health Organization, and a study in 2017 even found that the damage from breathing this air for 30 minutes outweighs the benefits of 30 minutes of cycling, meaning it is exceptionally detrimental. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Galapagos Islands. Okay, this one is my favorite on this entire list because the story is just so crazy. Basically, the Galapagos Islands were pretty inhospitable to life, and you might be thinking, well, things live there now, so how could that be true? These islands emerged in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, sort of as the cap on still active volcanoes. That still active part is definitely key there. The heat from the volcanoes basically sterilized them, and not only this, but they were 600 miles from land. Everything that lives on the island now naturally found its way there. Plants with seeds who flew through the wind, animals that rode in somehow on a current, vegetation that came in on the back of a turtle. It truly is just remarkable. Of course, humans have interfered now and brought some different species, but even so, this story is just so cool.
Number 10. Snake Island. Located 95 miles off the coast of Sao Paulo, Brazil, is Snake Island. It makes you ask yourself, is that just a name, or are there like thousands of snakes occupying the land? Well, both. What happened originally was thousands of years ago, the part of the land that once connected the island to mainland kind of disappeared. Over time, the ocean rose up, but the snakes had no idea because they're snakes. Yeah, they weren't really paying attention, it seems. Before any of these snakes got time to pack their bags, these snakes were stuck on the island, and decade after decade, that number only got bigger. One of the deadliest snakes in the world too, the golden lancehead viper. Oof. Yeah, there's over 4,000 of them on this island. From 1902 to the early 1920s, a few brave souls lived there and operated the lighthouse. But according to some local myths, the last lighthouse keeper was swarmed by snakes after he left a window open. I'm not sure if that's a real story or not, but I believe it after seeing all these photos. Yeah, that's scary. I don't like that. I don't like snakes. Number 9, Heard Island. Have you heard of this island? Right in the middle of Antarctica and Australia is this tiny little island. The Australian government has made it illegal for anybody to visit this island, so if you have some free time, a kayak and suntan lotion, yeah, don't even think about it. Why is this island forbidden though? Is this the one full of deadly snakes? The myth surrounding Heard Island is that it's occupied with animals that we don't know even exist. One of a kind. Oh yeah, just like Snake Island, only other fantastic beasts. We got some secret hybrids going on. Is this Jurassic Park in real life? Like, it feels like it's Jurassic Park in real life. The island looks pretty similar too. The island itself is quite unique geographically. Heard Island is home to 2 volcanoes and the tallest mountain in Australia, so there's plenty of space for hybrid animals to hide and look menacing in, you know? I love the idea of animals getting their own island though. 1 point for Gryffindor. Like, we have enough. Time to give back, you know? Except for the Snake Island, yeah. That one can go.
In our number 7 spot today, we have Wittenoom. This place in Australia is the home of a former blue asbestos mine, which is exactly what makes it one of the most contaminated places in the country. I mean this literally. The roads were paved with asbestos, even after the mine shut down in 1966. While the city was once the home to 20,000 residents, the population dropped significantly after the deaths of 300 former mine workers from mesothelioma. Apparently it was decided that it would be too expensive to clean up the town, so instead the government just declared it unfit to inhabit and took it off the maps. While most people have since left the town, it is said that 3 residents refused to leave and still remain in the almost completely abandoned town. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Danakil Depression. The Danakil Depression is a part of the Afar Triangle in Ethiopia, and it is a geological depression that came about as a result of Africa and Asia moving apart. The divergence of 3 tectonic plates caused rifting and volcanic activity. This place is the hottest place on Earth in terms of average year-round temperatures, and it is also one of the lowest places on Earth at 100 meters below sea level. There are active volcanoes in the area, there are salt springs, sulfur springs, and it only gets about 4 to 8 inches of rain every year. What I'm saying is that this place is stunning and has an incredibly rich geological history, but it isn't very hospitable. Despite that, there are people who call this place home. The Afar people have called this area home for many years, and of course that poses the question of how? The biggest industry in the Danakil Depression is salt, and many of the people who live here will mine salt with their hands and then take a 2-day camel journey into the next town to sell it. The people who live here also have to deal with an average temperature of 35 degrees Celsius, but sometimes it gets as hot as 50 degrees Celsius. Somehow they have overcome the odds and the obstacles and managed to thrive in this extreme environment, and it is said that this was made possible over the centuries by their ability to adapt to need less food and water than other humans. Honestly, it's one of the most remarkable things I've ever heard. In our number 5 spot today, we have La Oroya. Located in Peru, this town has a population of 30,000 people, despite the metal smelter contamination that has been seen since 1922. The smelter closed in 2009 after the company that ran it declared bankruptcy, but here's how that happened in the first place. The American-owned company ran out of money because they had to fund the environmental cleanup and the anti-pollution measures. Seems like maybe they should have chosen a different path. Seems like it didn't pay off to pollute someone else's air. I guess they forgot that there's consequences for actions. It still remains as one of the most polluted areas in the entire world, and the toxic metals have gone on to infect the water, the soil, and the air. While it is completely unsafe to live there, people still do, and sadly, they suffer the extreme adverse effects of it. In our number 4 spot today, we have St. Kilda. St. Kilda is the most remote settlement of the British Isles, and it is so isolated that it is often cut off off by storms for weeks, and sometimes even months at one time. That is most likely the reason as to why the previous inhabitants had developed a culture, economy, and government that was completely separate and different to their English rulers. Unfortunately, between missionaries and officials coming to the island in an attempt to change their ways of life that were working perfectly fine for them, their sources of income dwindling, births not being able to keep up with the death rate, and the immigration rate combined, as well as the inevitable disease-ridden tourists coming to their island for whatever reason, things for those who once lived on the island changed drastically, and it was decided that they would have to evacuate the island in 1930. Since then, people have tried to resettle the island, but none have remained permanently, likely because of the isolation.
Number 3. Eilean Mor Scotland. Ah yes, Scotland. Since we're on the topics of islands without any human interaction, let's mention this wee lad, shall we? What better island to visit than one with nobody on it, huh? Don't mind the sea curse. If the lighthouse didn't scare you, maybe you can manage this one. In 1901, a ship was headed towards the Flannan Islands, completely uninhabited, and on this ship we had one Captain James Harvey and one Joseph Moore. They were both heading to the island to watch the lighthouse, but upon arrival, nobody was there to greet them. Usually the lads, before they were ready to go, haven't been counting down the days and all, they blew the horn, waited, and still nobody. The keepers rowed to shore and started walking up the steep set of stairs towards the lighthouse. When they got there, they realized the door was unlocked and 2 of the 3 coats were missing. Upon further investigation, he saw half-eaten food, a chair that had been tipped over, and the kitchen clock had stopped working. Still, no sign of the keepers. When checking the lighthouse log, however, the previous days were a little odd. December 12th, the second assistant, Thomas Marshall, wrote, quote, "Severe winds, the likes of which I have never seen before in 20 years. James was awfully quiet, and William, the third lad, was crying the whole time." End quote. Yeah, there's some sinister vibes there for sure. Like, this is like The Lighthouse the movie, but like in real life, you know? Terrifying. No thank you. I wouldn't stay in any lighthouse, let alone this one. Number 2. Easton Beach, Rhode Island. Back in 1750, the Seabird, this big beautiful ship, slowly arrived and washed up on the shore of Easton's Beach. There was a big breakfast waiting on the table of the ship, the kettle was boiling on the stove, but there was no sign of the crew anywhere. Just an empty ship washed up along the shore. Creepy. Unlike the lighthouse, everything looked fine. No chairs tipped over, no frozen clocks, no signs of violence. It was oddly the opposite. What makes this story more creepy is that after the cargo was unloaded, the Seabird itself vanished overnight. Some believe the forces of the island took the crew, then soon after took the Seabird. What are your thoughts? And number 1, Garbage Island. We must finish on this one, right? Come on. Perhaps one of the largest islands of them all, too. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It's located in the North Pacific subtropics. Here's basically 4 of these large systems just swirling around ocean currents, and some of them are chock full of garbage. Yeah, it's pretty disturbing. I've heard of the garbage patch before, but I had no idea how large it was. You know what I mean? The thing actually turned into Garbage Island. It's graduated. This trash island is 3 times the size of France, or twice the size of Texas. It's big. This island is man-made, obviously, and it continues to grow. It's not all grim, however. There's a team working on reducing that size right now. The environmental nonprofit Ocean Cleanup has removed over 80,000 pounds of trash. I'm gonna end on a good note, you know what I mean? That's a good one.
Starting us off at number 10 is the Lascaux Caves in France. Back in 1940, deep in a cave in southwestern France, a series of stunning Paleolithic cave paintings were discovered. These paintings are believed to be up to 20,000 years old. The paintings that plastered the wall of this ancient cave are made up of vivid images of stag, cattle, bison, cats, and more. The most impressive though is located in the Hall of Bulls, where there are 4 giant large bull paintings, with the largest one measuring up to 17 feet long. This incredible ancient cave was sadly closed off to the public in the 1960s when it was discovered that the cave was home to some dangerous fun guy. And I'm not talking about me, the dangerous fun guy, I'm talking about fungi as in fungus and black mold, both of which are deadly to humans. On top of that, human presence is considered destructive to the work of art, and the country of France would rather us humans not ruin it. But no worries, just last year a replica of the cave was made right next to the original so that tourists around the world could get as close as they could to a real glimpse of these 20,000-year-old cave paintings. But like I said, I'm a bad boy, so that means I'm gonna go to that cave, not the replica one. And I'm not paying admission either. At our number 9 spot, we have the island of Surtsey in Iceland. 55 years ago, in a volcanic eruption, this island was formed. This gave scientists from around the world to not only discover a new ecosystem, but also the birth of one as well. For that reason alone, unless you are one of the scientists completing research on the island, all other human visitation is strictly restricted. The island was formed in 1963 and is actually one of the smallest islands on Earth because it continues to shrink due to water and wind erosion. Based on studies completed by the Surtsey Research Society, this island could be at sea level by the year 2100. Which gives all of us bad boys a hard deadline to complete our cool rule breaking trip. I say we go once right now and then in 2099 just before it gets at sea level. So we can compare pictures because obviously we're all still gonna be alive by then, right? Nothing can stop us. At our number 8 spot we have the Coca-Cola Vault. Back in 1886 the world was introduced to the infamous Coca-Cola soft drink thanks to John Pemberton. From the very beginning, everyone in the world wanted to get their hands on this amazing soft drink recipe. Probably because it used to be made with a popular drug, and I think it's fairly obvious which one it is, Coca-Cola? With tons of people going after the recipe, just like Plankton going after the Krabby Patty secret formula, Pemberton needed help keeping the recipe a secret. In 1919, the recipe was kept under lock and key at a New York City bank, and then in 1925 it was transferred to a bank in Atlanta so it could be a little bit closer to home. Yeah, if I was Pemberton, I think I would have been more nervous having the recipe locked away in another city's bank, but who knows who's working on the inside, right? But finally, in 2011, the Coca-Cola Company decided to open up an exhibit in an Atlanta museum that also showcased the famous vault where the recipe is now kept and hidden under strict security. Very few have access and will ever have access to the inside, but one thing is for certain, I shall study every single Mission Impossible movie and learn the ways of the super spy, and I'll get inside that vault. Hopefully. Should I be putting this on camera?
Number 7. Roanoke Island, North Carolina. Just off the coast of what is now North Carolina, back in August 1587, around 100 English settlers arrived to what was then Roanoke Island. John White, governor of the new colony, had to sail back to England to grab supplies. The 1500s, huh? Just must have been exhausting. While he was away, a naval war broke out between England and Spain, so his commute was a little delayed, and he got back 3 years later in 1590 with said supplies. Hey, sorry I'm late folks, yeah, there was just a little small naval war, had to grab some supplies for numerous years of my life. Upon arrival, however, nobody was there. His wife, daughter, granddaughter, among the 100 or so inhabitants all vanished. The only hint as to where they went or what happened was the word Croatoan carved into a wooden post and crow carved onto a tree. Croatoan was the name of the First Nations band that lived on the island as well, but after looking for evidence, theories, even archaeological exploration, experts still can't figure this one out. Yeah, Teal's actually been to this island. Yeah, he said the winds were lovely. I don't know where that ties in, but. Number 6. Falkland Islands, United Kingdom. Back in August 1980, a Royal Marine Alan Addis was seen for the very last time. On August 8th, Addis and a bunch of other Marines met up in the village hall, where there were about 50 locals there as well. It was a social night. The Marines left in groups at different times throughout the evening, but until 1:30 a.m., Addis was still there. People saw him. The next morning, all the Marines left to head back to base, but after sailing for 30 minutes, they realized Addis was missing. They called his mother and said that he was missing, but the next day, they told her that he actually might have drowned. Accidentally, of course. The sea and air search was underway shortly after, and after a few weeks, they looked and couldn't find anything. The following year in April, Argentine forces invaded the islands. This was known as the Falklands War, and during this time, the police files on Addis' disappearance were all lost. We think that they were deliberately destroyed to avoid British military deployment information being leaked into the Argentine hands. What do you think? Number 5. Poveglia Island, Italy. The small island of Poveglia has taken many lives, unfortunately. When the bubonic plague arrived there in 1348, the island had become a quarantine colony. So if you had symptoms, you were sent to this island to die, unfortunately. It was horrible. Then again, in 1630, the Black Death crept in, and once again, the center of the island became a mass graveyard. The soil is 50% human remains at this point. If its dark history doesn't scare you away, the ghost stories surrounding the island just may do the trick. In the early 20th century, mentally ill patients were sent to this island, but the doctor that was responsible for treatments, well, he himself was a little mad. He would try bizarre methods, cruel experiments, unethical treatments, you name it. The doctor himself ended up going downhill mentally, and he jumped to his death from the bell tower. Apparently the bell tower no longer stands, but the soil is still 50% remains, so either way, yeah, it's a giant no from me. Too much bad history in every kind of way. You know what I mean? I don't want to visit. Number 4. Robins Island. Forbidden, but for reasons you might not have guessed. I figured I'd liven up the mood a little bit, so let's talk about the privately owned Robins Island. For starters, it's absolutely massive, and she's beautiful. It's not made of lava or snakes. just normal sand and trees. The best part of it all? No humans allowed. Yeah, aliens are like, yes! The 435-acre island sits off the coast of New Suffolk, New York. Many names have come and go when it comes to this island ownership, but as of right now, it's a forbidden nature preserve. The owner is a man named Louis Bacon. Even his name loves animals too. Louis Bacon has poured time and money into building this sanctuary and fears that if anybody else gets involved, the whole thing is gonna fall apart. Fair enough. Aside from that side quest Mr. Bacon is pulling off, Robins Island is home to the largest population of turtles in the state. Yeah, fun fact. So don't worry, he's not really alone.
Starting us off in our top 3 spot at number 3 is North Sentinel Island. Belonging to the archipelago and Andaman Islands located in the Indian Ocean, North Sentinel Island has remained virtually untouched by modern humans. Virtually untouched. Sounds like paradise, right? Nope. It is actually inhabited by one of the last of the world's uncontacted tribes. The indigenous people on the island are known as the Sentinelese. There have been a few attempts to make contact, but they usually end up deadly. In 2006, it was reported that 2 fishermen were killed by the Sentinelese after their boat was carried by the current and washed ashore. There is now a 3-mile restriction zone around the island for the safety of sailors and the Sentinelese people. The Indian government has abandoned all plans to ever get in contact with the indigenous people and would rather just leave them alone. 1, because they don't want to die themselves, and 2, because if they were to carry a modern disease or flu, the Sentinelese people could be wiped out completely. I think I'm with the Indian government on this one. I'm just gonna let you be. And finally, coming in at number 1, I hope you all thought of this when we started the video today, we have the ever so secretive, mysterious, scientific, heavily guarded Area 51. The infamous Area 51, located in the middle of the Nevada desert, is said to be home to top secret United States Air Force facilities, but as many more believe it to be home to aliens, an alien craft that have been crashed here on Earth for years. Unless you're in the highest levels of the United States military, you ain't getting anywhere near close to this base. Even the gates are miles away from the actual top secret base, and you probably know what happens if you get too close to those. Lethal force is permitted. Or in other words, you get shot. After the huge failure of the Storm the Area 51, Let's See Them Aliens campaign last year, I think it's safe to say that we don't need to go to this one. I would love to travel to the extraterrestrial highway and take a peek, but I don't need to get any closer than that. And besides, with all the incredible alien news over the past year, it sounds like we need to keep our eyes on the ocean more than Area 51. So, get your swim trunks.